In our headlines on this Thursday, April 30th, here in South Korea, the U.S. Federal Reserve holds its benchmark interest rate steady as policymakers seek to navigate persistent inflation and a looming leadership transition at the central bank. Meanwhile, the Trump administration reaffirms its intentions to extend America's naval blockade of Iran's seaports as it accuses Tehran of taking a page out of Pyongyang's nuclear playbook. Here on the local front, South Korea's production, consumption and investment all rise in March for the first time in 6 months, but pundits remain cautious about the future amid tensions over Iran's nuclear ambitions. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to leave its benchmark interest rate unchanged for a third session in a row. Our Kim Jun-hong covers this latest decision, which comes ahead of a leadership transition at the American Central Bank that pundits here believe renders uncertain future U.S. monetary policy.
The U.S. Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged at 3.5 to 3.75% on Wednesday, in what is likely to be Jerome Powell's final meeting as Fed chair. The decision was announced after a divided FOMC regular meeting and marks the third consecutive rate freeze this year. Explaining the move, the central bank pointed to mounting inflation pressure from rising global oil prices tied to the Middle East conflict, as well as growing economic uncertainty.
The U.S. economy has been expanding at a solid pace. While job gains have remained low, the unemployment rate has been little changed in recent months. Inflation has moved up and is elevated, in part reflecting the recent increase in global energy prices.
The decision was the most divided since 1992, with 4 of the 12-member committee dissenting, including 3 who took issue with language in the post-meeting statement that suggested the central bank could eventually resume rate cuts. The Fed said it remains committed to achieving its 2% inflation goal over time, adding it is prepared to adjust policy if risks threaten the path, a signal some analysts say leaves the door open to rate cuts. The meeting was also likely the final FOMC session under Jerome Powell. However, at a press conference on the same day, he said he plans to stay at the central bank as a member of its board of governors.
After my term as chair ends on May 15, I will continue to serve as a governor for a period of time to be determined. I plan to keep a low profile as a governor.
The June FOMC meeting is expected to be chaired by nominee Kevin Warsh. The Senate Banking Committee on Wednesday advanced Warsh's nomination to the full Senate, and if confirmed, he is expected to assume the role after Powell's term as chair ends. Meanwhile, Korea's central bank said the Fed's split decision has added to uncertainty over the future path of U.S. monetary policy, particularly ahead of the next chair's inauguration. Earlier Thursday, the Bank of Korea pointed to deeper divisions within the FOMC and rising inflation pressure from higher oil prices. The central bank added it will stay alert, monitor risks including the situation in the Middle East closely, and act as needed. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has reaffirmed intentions to extend America's naval blockade of Iran's seaports, and Iran has vowed to retaliate. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has the latest.
Following the collapse of the second round of ceasefire talks, signs suggesting a prolonged deadlock continue to emerge. According to foreign media reports, the two sides appear to be preparing for a prolonged standoff, having failed to find common ground on key issues such as lifting the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and addressing Iran's nuclear program. In a phone interview with Axios, Trump reportedly said he was going to keep Iran under a naval blockade until the regime agrees to a deal that addresses U.S. concerns about its nuclear program. The Wall Street Journal also reported that Trump has instructed his aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iran, aimed at forcing Iran to abandon its nuclear ambitions. Iran, however, is insisting that reopening the Strait of Hormuz and ending the war should be addressed first. According to Iran's state-run TV, a senior Iranian security official said that the Iranian military has reached the limit of its patience with the maritime blockade, and if the U.S. continues its illegal blockade around the Strait of Hormuz, retaliation will be inevitable. Meanwhile, the U.S. has pitched a new international coalition to restore shipping through the strait, according to the Wall Street Journal. Citing an internal State Department cable sent to U.S. embassies, the report said that Washington has asked its diplomats to press foreign governments into joining a new alliance called the Maritime Freedom Construct, which would coordinate information sharing, diplomatic efforts, and sanctions enforcement to reopen the strait. The MFC would be led by the State Department, serving as the hub for diplomatic operations, while the U.S. Central Command provides real-time maritime intelligence to facilitate information sharing between commercial shipping and allied militaries. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, the Lee Jae-myung administration is betting big on hydrogen as part of its broader push for energy security and resilience. My colleague Kim Do-yeon files this report from the capital region's largest hydrogen production base.
A heavy-duty truck carrying bright orange tube trailers pulls into a facility. Its cargo is hydrogen. This is the largest hydrogen production plant in the capital region, located in Pyeongtaek. By extracting hydrogen from natural gas, the facility produces up to 7 tons daily, enough to charge over 8,000 cars. Amid rising geopolitical tensions, Korea's energy vulnerability is intensifying. The country relies on the Middle East for over 70% of its crude oil. However, only 20% of its natural gas comes from the region. While global gas prices fluctuate, they are currently trending downward, offering a crucial buffer against oil shocks.
Because the natural gas supply chain is highly diversified compared to oil, distribution is much more stable.
The retail price of hydrogen has remained stable at around 10,000 won per kilogram. Fully charging a passenger car costs roughly 50,000 to 60,000 won. While global natural gas prices do fluctuate due to geopolitical risks, the Korean government heavily subsidizes hydrogen retail costs to shield consumers. The rationale behind absorbing this financial burden is simple: cleaner air. Extracting hydrogen from fossil fuels like LNG still creates carbon dioxide. This facility right next door addresses that flaw directly by capturing 100% of the CO2 emitted during the process and putting it into use. The captured carbon is compressed, frozen, and repurposed into dry ice, turning a greenhouse gas into usable commercial asset. The captured carbon can also be supplied to major e-commerce logistics centers and local shipyards to power welding. But operators are looking beyond secondary sales.
The ultimate goal is turning captured CO2 back into energy. Once the conversion technology is optimized, our vision is to manufacture and supply next-generation aviation fuels directly from this plant.
The reality is that natural gas is still an imported fossil fuel. Hydrogen produced this way is not complete energy independence. But by neutralizing emissions and localizing the supply chain, this infrastructure serves as an essential stepping stone toward a truly green energy future. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's production, consumption and investment all rose in the month of March for the first time in 6 months, but pundits remain cautious about the months ahead amid tensions on the geopolitical front. Our economics correspondent Park Jun-han reports.
Korea's economy delivered a broadly positive set of triple growth numbers in March, with industrial output, consumption and investment all rising for the first time in 6 months. According to data released on Thursday by the Ministry of Data and Statistics, overall industrial production rose 0.3% from the previous month, extending gains for a second consecutive month. Equipment investment rose 12.6% quarter-on-quarter in the first quarter of 2026. This is the largest quarterly increase since the fourth quarter of 1999, more than 26 years ago. Retail sales grew 2.4% quarter-on-quarter, the strongest surge since the second quarter of 2020. Semiconductor production, however, fell 8.1% month-on-month. While it might sound alarming, an official from the Ministry of Data and Statistics said this was due to a base effect. The official explained that the semiconductor sector saw the decline in March following a 28.2% surge the previous month, noting that its performance remains strong. The March data showed some positive numbers, but it largely reflects momentum that predates the Middle East conflict.
Overall, the March data appear to reflect a combination of factors, including the initial shock from the war, seasonal maintenance schedules, and government policies. Going forward, we need to monitor cumulative time series trends from April onward, as well as cross-industry spillover effects from the war.
With high oil prices and geopolitical uncertainty issues unresolved, Korea's economic trajectory beyond the second quarter remains difficult to predict. 박준환, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has called for greater collaboration within the labor sector. Speaking at a weekly meeting with his top aides on this Thursday, he maintained that workers garner strength through solidarity, given their vulnerable position in the labor market. That being said, he warned that excessive demands by some organized labor groups could face public backlash and ultimately harm workers. Now, his remarks come as tens of thousands of Samsung Electronics workers are set to go on strike starting May 21st for higher bonuses. South Korea's defense ministry says talks about U.S. troop reduction from South Korea are not taking place. The statement comes as U.S. President Donald Trump revealed a review of potential U.S. troop reduction from Germany on his social media platform. Accordingly, the defense ministry here has dismissed any such review with regard to the Korean peninsula, adding instead that Seoul and Washington will continue close consultations to ensure the stable stationing of American forces here to strengthen their combined defense posture. There are concerns, though, that conflict over the legal case here against e-commerce giant Coupang may be stalling security talks between Seoul and Washington. That being said, our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young recently reached out to a former U.S. diplomat for his thoughts on the matter. Do take a listen.
Korea and the United States should focus on building a future nuclear and high-tech partnership, overcoming commercial sticking points in their bilateral relations. That's according to Henry Haggard, a former U.S. State Department official, now a senior advisor at West Exec Advisors. He spoke with Arirang News amid concerns in Seoul that corporate disputes are affecting sensitive security talks, after more than 50 U.S. lawmakers in Washington raised concerns over regulatory treatment of U.S.-linked firms including Coupang. Seoul and Washington's joint bilateral fact sheet last year was expected to pave the way for discussions on advancing cooperation in nuclear-powered submarines, as well as fuel processing and enrichment under the existing civil nuclear framework. However, talks have been stalled for at least 2 months this year, despite the strategic interest for both sides. As Washington calls on its allies to build their own capabilities and invest in U.S. industries, Korea is ready to be a key partner with a $350 billion investment framework and the industrial base to support U.S. shipbuilding and nuclear supply chains.
So this unlocks a new level of cooperation. It allows and it encourages and works towards less reliance on Russia. I think there's also a significant knock-on effect into the civil nuclear space. Just the fact that we're working more on all things nuclear, I think will also build the natural conversation towards more cooperation on small modular reactors, on traditional reactors, in a space that again represents, over $1 trillion of market over the next 25 years.
National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak has acknowledged that the Coupang case is affecting the atmosphere of Korea-U.S. consultations and stressed the two issues must remain separate. He said the alliance requires constant management, describing it as a garden that needs ongoing care. Haggard said commercial disputes have risen time and time again, but are simply part of growing pains.
It's not just about the security relationship, it's also this technological relationship and this very advanced relationship. That's where we should be heading. To do that, we have to find a way to manage Korea's regulatory evolution, and the U.S. has to understand how Korea works such that they can match that pace and that evolution and profit from it. Really, I mean, it's a win-win.
Amid concerns, Haggard expressed confidence that the alliance itself is not being undermined and remains on course towards a more strategic partnership. Uchi Zoo, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea is looking ahead to a long weekend starting tomorrow, that is May 1st, which marks Labor Day here. And industry insiders are preparing for an influx of foreign travelers as this holiday period coincides with that around East Asia. Our Jin explains.
A triple overlap of holidays. China's Labor Day holiday runs from May 1st to 5th. Japan's Golden Week spans April 29th to May 6th. And Korea's Labor Day holiday on Friday ahead of Children's Day on Tuesday. As the recent hike in fuel prices pushes travelers to take shorter, closer trips, Korea's tourism industry could be the winner for what's being called a Super Golden Week, as the travel and casino industries enter a marketing race to attract travelers. According to the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism on Thursday, the estimated number of tourists expected to visit Korea during this holiday period comes to between 80 and 90,000 from Japan and over 100,000 from China, and over 200,000 foreign tourists overall. An upward trend in foreign tourists visiting Korea has already been detected on online travel platforms. Noel Universe reported an increase in sales of 160% between the period of March 27th and May 10th compared to the same period last year. Global travel platform Klook saw increased traffic as well between April 13th and 27th, where the search frequency for Korean tourism products increased by 57% in China and 7% in Japan compared to last year, with various culture, entertainment, and lifestyle discounts and event campaigns being promoted. What's notable is that there were increases in searches for travel to Busan, a 51% increase from China and a 96% increase from Japan. To prevent Seoul from facing the full influx of travelers, the government is expanding cruise routes linking Jeju and Busan. The Ministry of Justice announced on Wednesday that special immigration measures will be implemented between April 30th to May 5th. Some departure gates at Incheon International Airport will open earlier on days when passenger traffic is expected to peak, while additional personnel will be available for extended working hours as well as strengthened foreign language assistance. Incheon International Airport expects approximately 1.3 million international passengers, an average of 215,000 per day during this upcoming holiday period. Jin, Arirang News.
And South Korea's expanded Culture Day campaign is seeing a sharp rise in public participation. According to the Culture Ministry, during the first month of the campaign, that is April, there were over 4,700 events at over 1,700 venues nationwide, up 5.7-fold on month. Now, the surge follows the government's decision to expand the campaign from once a month to once a week, that is every Wednesday, to boost public access to the arts. And amid renewed debate over whether or not zoos are ethical, one free public zoo in Gwangju is seeking to share a more meaningful approach. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo was there.
This painted stork once roamed freely at Gwangju's Uchi Zoo before suffering a serious leg fracture. But thanks to the veterinarian stationed here, it's now recovering after emergency surgery.
The surgery was successful thanks to the zoo's great medical facilities. In the past, zoos were often just places where people came to see animals, but we aim to show the full journey, from how animals arrive here to how they're cared for.
Kang says injured animals like this stork would normally have been euthanized or kept away from public view due to a shortage of vets and concerns over exhibition value, but Uchi Zoo is taking a different approach.
Among the animals here is Dukobi, a parrot getting ready for artificial beak surgery later this year. After losing her beak years ago in an accident, Dukobi found fast treatment and steady recovery here at this zoo, where injured animals like her get a second chance.
Medical training is another way the zoo provides proper care, even training animals to calmly have their blood taken without needing an anesthetic. And the entire process is open to the public.
Learning about these cases seems especially educational for children.
Beyond medical care, the zoo is also expanding behavioral enrichment programs, creating environments that encourage animals to act according to their natural instincts.
Many animals here have their own stories. We want this zoo to be a sanctuary where rescued animals can find safety and care. We also hope to connect more with visitors through enrichment programs.
Zoos like this are increasingly being recognized as a model for how zoos can evolve.
Creating experience around the animals so that people can, as we've talked about, can see them exhibiting natural behaviors and living interesting lives. And that's important as we build a bond with the public, that they know that they can trust that these animals are receiving exceptional care.
As more visitors seek out these meaningful experiences, the number of guests at Uchi Zoo during the first 3 months of this year doubled on year. And as the zoo continues helping shape an appropriate zoo culture, expectations are rising for even more visitors this year. 박건우, Arirang News, Gwangju.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he discussed a possible ceasefire in Ukraine during a 90-minute phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin also said Putin proposed a temporary halt to mark the World War II victory anniversary on May 9th. Trump told reporters he floated the idea of a ceasefire and added he thinks Putin might go along with it. A similar truce announced by Putin last year lasted 3 days, but was never agreed with Kyiv. Trump also said Putin offered assistance on the issue of Iran's enriched uranium, but he told Putin he first wanted him focused on ending the war in Ukraine. All 4 of America's largest technology companies beat Wall Street expectations in their quarterly earnings reports on Wednesday, but market reaction was mixed, with investors focused less on what these companies earned and more on what they plan to spend. Alphabet rose nearly 7% after hours after its cloud unit reported 63% growth, and its total revenue hit nearly $110 billion. Amazon gained 4% on strong revenue of $181 billion. Microsoft was little changed despite beating forecasts, but Meta was the outlier, falling over 6% after hours after raising its 2026 spending plan to as much as $145 billion. President Trump says his administration will release as much information as possible on UFOs in the near future. He said on Wednesday that a government review has turned up, quote, a number of interesting documents. Trump set the review in motion back in February, directing agencies to open records on unidentified aerial phenomena. Prior Pentagon investigations concluded no proof of extraterrestrial activity on Earth has ever been found. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Much like today, inland areas will have temperature swings of around 15 degrees tomorrow, so you may want to have a light jacket with you. Rain is set to move in later today, affecting southern Chungcheongdo, the eastern parts of Jeollado, and the Gyeongsangdo provinces, with about 5 to 10 millimeters expected. Most of the rain will clear out overnight, but in the Gyeongsangdo provinces, it may stick around into tomorrow morning. Dry conditions are still in place in some inland areas, though a few advisories could be lifted as the rain moves in. Tomorrow's Seoul will start the day at 11 degrees Celsius, Daejeon at 10 degrees, Busan at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 25 degrees, Chuncheon at 24 degrees, Daegu at 23 degrees. Heading into the weekend, we'll keep plenty of sunshine and warmer temperatures through Saturday. But inland areas will continue to see large day-to-night temperature swings. And then by Sunday, rain is expected to return nationwide.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.